Hello and welcome back to this channel based on psychology, psychotherapy, wellness, and of course self-awareness. Today's content will be looking at a question that was posed here on YouTube, which I will paraphrase to protect privacy if this individual wants to remain private. So if any of you want to discuss a specific topic and you want me to read it verbatim, word for word, just please state so when you do send a comment through or a message, a private message. And of course, I'll use a pseudonym or an alternative name to protect your identity, and we can generally discuss. Remember that every single question and problem is not a one size fits all approach. It is case by case, but we can speak about general themes that you could possibly take into further analysis with somebody that can help you or in your own self-analysis. So today's question, in a paraphrase type of way, is looking at soul ties. So a feeling that you owe something to a family member. And the question was posed as to how you set yourself free from a parent-child relationship or a sibling relationship. How do you set yourself free from these soul ties? Now, it lends itself to this understanding of indebtedness, a feeling of indebtedness, as a construct of guilt. Now, to briefly recap on the previous video on guilt and shame, guilt is a feeling that you have done something bad or you haven't done enough of something. Shame is a feeling that you are, as a person, bad. When we have a feeling of indebtedness when it comes to guilt, is you feel that you owe someone or something always in a perpetual, chronic way. So I wonder if any of you have ever been in debt. So if you've owed somebody money or time or energy, how heavy that feels. It's a heavy feeling. You don't feel quite free or liberated to continue with your life because you've got this feeling of owing to something or someone. Now, when that is inculcated into relationships, where one feels indebted to one's own family or a particular relationship, it can put so much strain on that person to be free, to be their own individual self, that it can be quite a difficult thing to deal with. In collectivist societies, such as in South Africa, where we are expected in many cultures to help our families and to be there for our communities, this is richly intertwined into the fabric of South African culture. Many cultures have this. But when we have a chronic feeling of indebtedness, I like to think of it as a carrying of a very heavy backpack. So, as we traverse through life, it's like climbing a bit of a mountain. So there's those ups and downs that are really quite difficult to navigate. But when you're carrying a backpack of things that are not yours to carry, you're making your life journey much more difficult and easier for other people. So if we look at it that way, when we feel chronically indebted to other people, we often are taking away the life lessons and journey of the other person for them to navigate their own resiliency skills, their own strengths and weaknesses, because for whatever reason, they've put it on you. Often this happens through generational trauma ties, which means that if a grandparent put it on a parent and then the parent puts it on the next child, it's passed down generation to generation. So it's very important, you'll always hear this on this channel, that we break that generational tie, because it just takes one person to model the change of appropriately giving back responsibility to individuals to take care of their own lives, but to rely on each other. So that interdependency and not that codependency where someone has to betray themselves in order to fulfill the needs of other people. That indebtedness of feeling like you're carrying that backpack. So as you go through life and you try and get through life in all of its glories and its catastrophes, it's so important to see how much of that backpack is really yours and how much that you're carrying is it on other people to learn. So how much of that is for other people to see that they perhaps are feeling that they can't do it. They can't get through life without putting it on somebody else, and specifically you if you've been inculcated in that relationship. So that question being posed of how do I free myself? How do I get liberated from that? Is you've got to figure out psychologically, spiritually, intellectually, how much debt needs to be paid. Now, this is a difficult question to ask because if you've been told since small that you are indebted to your family or a relationship or a parent or a sibling, it's going to be very difficult to switch off your head and just say, okay, I'm just free to go and live my life. A very good way, a barometer to help you navigate this, is to look at what's the function of a family system. Healthy families have what we call a balance of a sense of individuality. So each member of the family is given enough room to be individuals and to sway differently from the group norm. And then they have the opposing force, the paradox of togetherness, of belonging. So if we have those two things of individuality, so we allow the family members to be themselves, to speak their truth, and then we have this shared sense of belonging. That's a healthy, functional family system. Now, it's not perfect, of course. You're going to have your disagreements and family functions that there's a problem. But in general, if you have a family that can navigate between the two, that's a very good standing point. When you have a feeling of indebtedness, a feeling of I owe you, I have to give you something, then what has happened is the individuality side is compromised. There's too much of the we concept, as in there's no separation between me and you. What is so important about working with this chronic sense of indebtedness with guilt is if you don't work through that and you carry it on and repeat these cycles into other burgeoning relationships, you will be attracted to and bring into your energy people of the opposing force, which is what we call entitlement. So people that generally feel quite entitled have a psychology that they need the world to owe them something. So you can see how that is like a magnet. It brings two people together because unconsciously the person who hasn't worked through a chronic sense of indebtedness to their family system or the organization or a specific relationship will be attracted to somebody who is quite entitled and feels that this person or the world at large owes them something. So the person who's quite entitled often has what we call an external locus of control. So they believe that there's outside forces that are governing their lives. So they're quite disempowered. They often don't have a lot of personal agency. And so they're attracted to the person that has got a very strong internal locus of control and often feels they overdo it. They do way too much for their environment. Again, this is a very difficult line to navigate in collectivist cultures where it's passed down generation to generation that in order to be a good, in inverted commas, brother, sister, mother, father, cousin, worker, etc., you have to do or be certain things. Is we as a society and in our family systems need to challenge that all the way from grassroots up. And we have to start looking at family system histories to see where that was inculcated, because it's actually not even healthy for the person that you are perpetually helping. Is that at some point you have to look at what is it going to take to set yourself free. How are you going to set yourself free from this feeling that you cannot continue your own life and you cannot continue to grow and challenge yourself and make your impact in the world without letting somebody else down? A lot of people often say they feel like they're being selfish if they are doing their own lives, if they are doing something that doesn't necessarily agree with the group think of the family system or the organization or relationship. But we have to start challenging that we are members, individual members of a collective whole. So it doesn't mean that because we're part of a collective whole that we have to adopt the same belief systems, the same narrative, and the same boundary systems. Is we are individuals within a family system. Of course, we have the opposing force that is very unhealthy as well, is if you're too isolated from either a family system, obviously if it's not toxic, or a systemic cultural community system where we need a shared sense of belonging. So we need to have a balance of the two. If it is difficult to negotiate with your system to allow you to be more of an individual, you're going to have to work on what is it going to take to set yourself free and to give yourself that permission to go and live your life until whoever it is that's making you feel so indebted to them is ready to meet you halfway in a very, very healthy way. Those are the most important things, is that you're not giving up on the relationship, is just that you are saying to these people or that person or your family that I really need a different frame of how this relationship and the trajectory and the direction of this relationship is going to go that benefits both of us. Because remember what we said with agreeableness is that we cannot just enter into relationships to serve other people and completely abandon our own needs. That's not a relationship. Relationships are negotiated. And yes, there are family systems, culturally and religiously, that it's seen as disrespectful to speak up to an elder person in your family system. But it is important to reframe that you're not being disrespectful, you're just speaking about your perception about how the experience or the relationship dynamic is going through. I hope that briefly answered a bit of the analytical side of that interaction, and then we will look at on Friday the psychology of the opposing force, which is the psychology of entitlement.